In 2025, corporate America announced 54,694 layoffs explicitly blamed on AI. The same year, MIT discovered something different. 95% of corporate AI pilots failed. Both numbers are real. Companies cited AI when they cut workers, and most of the AI they cited isn't working yet. The first comes from a December congressional report by Congresswoman Valerie Foushee. The second from MIT's State of AI in Business survey. The gap between them is where this video lives. Which of those two numbers ages better depends on three sources: the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Anthropic's Economic Index, and one Google working paper that argues the whole framing might be wrong. The 54,694 figure comes from named firms: Amazon, Salesforce, Meta, IBM, Accenture, Intel, Microsoft, Google, Verizon. Each one announced layoffs and named AI as part of the reason in 2025. When a company names AI in a layoff announcement, the announcement is a fact. Whether AI did the work the announcement claims is a different question. Fauci's report measured the first thing, not the second. The Fauci count came from Challenger, Gray, and Christmas tracking, supplemented by public filings. It captures what firms said. The MIT survey captured what the AI did after the press release. The gap between those two measurements is the missing piece in most of the coverage. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei told Axios in May 2025 that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 5 years and push unemployment to 10 or 20%. Half. 5 years. That is the loudest version of the story. Goldman's labor economist Joseph Briggs wrote a different note in March 2026. Transitional unemployment up about half a percentage point. Baseline displacement risk near 2.5%. Between Amodei's half the jobs warning and Goldman's half a percentage point base case sits the actual reporting. The New York Fed measuring graduates, MIT measuring deployments, Anthropic measuring tasks. The serious analysts disagree by an order of magnitude. The numbers below are where the disagreement lives. The 54,694 figure is not evenly distributed. It concentrates in technology. Fauci identifies tech as the sector with the largest private layoff count in 2025. AI was cited as the second largest reason for cuts in October alone. Amazon announced reductions tied to its AI build through 2025. Microsoft restructured around its Copilot integration. Meta and Google trimmed middle management. IBM consolidated roles around Watson. Intel cut deeper than any of them. Intel is worth pausing on. The chip company announced cuts exceeding 15,000 roles, starting in August 2024 and extending through 2025. Those cuts were a strategic reset around foundry economics. AI is part of the story. The pivot is the bigger part. The cuts are real and they are loud. They are also concentrated in companies whose business model depends on convincing other companies the technology works. A pattern that does not look like broad displacement. It looks like an industry trimming itself in front of its customers. Notice the list. The firms cutting workers and citing AI are largely the firms that build AI. In April, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York reported that the unemployment rate among recent college graduates had climbed to about 5.5%. That is roughly the same rate as young men who never attended college. For workers aged 22 to 27, the figure is 6.9%. The premium on a degree, for hiring purposes, has compressed. The harder number sits next to that one. Roughly 41% of recent college graduates are now working in jobs that do not require a degree. That is the BLS underemployment reading. The graduates are working. They are not working at what they trained for. Harvard Business School ran a working paper in late 2025. Jobs involving structured and repetitive tasks fell 13% after ChatGPT's release. The decline showed up specifically in the categories most exposed to language model substitution. The cohort that should be entering knowledge work is not entering at the rate it used to. They are not appearing in the unemployment number because they are taking the job they did not train for. The first rung of the white-collar career ladder, the rung that used to absorb new entrants into structured analytical jobs, is the rung under pressure. MIT's State of AI in Business report ran the survey across enterprise generative AI deployments through 2024 and 2025. Companies invested an estimated $30 to $40 billion. 95% of the pilots never moved past testing. The systems either did not work well enough to put into production, or the integration cost exceeded the productivity gain. The common failure mode was not that the model could not do the task. It was that the model could not do the task reliably enough to remove the human checking it. Augmentation worked. Automation broke. Klarna gives the public case. In February 2024, the fintech said its AI assistant was doing the work of 700 customer service agents. By mid-2025, Klarna was rehiring human agents and walking the framing back. The press release came first. The walkback came quietly. The Anthropic Economic Index measured something different in March 2026. Across the occupations Claude users perform, about 49% of jobs have at least a quarter of their tasks done using the system. Pilots fail at the deployment layer. Tasks migrate at the worker layer. Part of the 95% is reliability. Part is integration cost. Part is supply. The International Energy Agency projects U.S. data center electricity demand roughly doubles by 2030. Interconnect queues in the two largest U.S. power markets run more than 4 years for new generation. Three forces shape what AI actually does inside companies: reliability, integration cost, and the physical supply of compute. None of them is in the layoff announcement. All of them are in the gap between what got cut and what got shipped. Most pilots fail. Most workers use the tools anyway. The substitution and the failure are happening in the same building. Goldman Sachs published a note in March, pulling one specific number out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Construction jobs tied to data center buildouts had increased by 216,000 since 2022. That is the other half of the AI labor story, and it does not show up in white-collar coverage at all. The name projects are real. OpenAI's Stargate venture, Crusoe Energy building data centers in Texas, Meta's Hyperion campus in Louisiana, which Mark Zuckerberg described as approaching the footprint of Manhattan. The CapEx line is real. The labor it requires is real. A 22-year-old with an English degree and a 38-year-old electrician are now in the same labor market in a way they were not 5 years ago. The 22-year-old is losing ground. The 38-year-old has more work than at any point in the last decade. The story is not unemployment, it is reallocation on the same CapEx line. In January 2026, Axios ran a piece based on a working paper from two Google economists, Zana Ischenko and Fabien Courteau-Millet. Their argument was that the entry-level job slump began before ChatGPT was widely available. The timing overlaps with the Federal Reserve's tightening cycle in 2022 and 2023. The Fed was deliberately cooling the labor market. It worked. The unemployment rate for 20 to 24-year-olds hit a 54-year low of 5.5% in spring 2023. Then it climbed. By the end of 2025, it had reached 8.2%. The climb began before agentic AI was a product category. The cooling happened to the right cohort at the right time. Ischenko and Courteau-Millet are explicit. Recent job losses were not particularly concentrated in the occupations most exposed to AI substitution. If AI were the dominant driver, the displacement signal should show up there first. Some of what gets attributed to AI displacement is plausibly the Federal Reserve doing what the Federal Reserve said it would do: cool an overheated labor market. The fact that the cooling has lasted longer than expected and has hit young workers hardest, is consistent with garden-variety monetary policy. AI may not be the largest force in the entry-level data. It may be the loudest one. There is a name worth giving this pattern. Call it the broken ladder. The bottom rung of the white-collar career ladder is the rung being pulled. The middle and upper rungs remain intact. Some of the pull is AI substitution. Some of it is monetary policy. The shape of the damage is the same. This is not what economists called the hollowing out in the 2000s. That was middle skill work, clerical and manufacturing, being squeezed by both ends. The 2026 pattern is different. The first rung is the part that is going, not the middle. A concrete case sits inside corporate law. Allen and Overy deployed an AI tool called Harvey across 3,500 lawyers in March 2023. Harvey does first-pass contract review, first-draft research memos, first-pass legal drafting. The tasks Harvey does are the tasks first-year associates used to do as the firm's training ground. The first rung is not just a job, it is the apprenticeship mechanism. Junior associates learn the firm's judgment by doing the structured work, then graduating to harder problems. If the structured work goes to AI, the apprenticeship goes with it. The pipeline up through senior judgment runs through the rung that is being pulled. Ladders work because each rung leads to the next. If the bottom is missing, the people who were supposed to start climbing do not climb. Some find other ladders. Some are out of the building. The shape of that displacement does not look like a recession. It looks like a missing cohort. The Indian IT and business process industry hit $283 billion in fiscal 2025. It employs about 5.8 million tech professionals. About 85% of its revenue comes from US and European clients. The same clients now running internal automation programs. The exposure is geographic, not just sectoral. The largest Indian IT firms, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, have all reported slowing growth through fiscal 2026. CRISIL projects the sector grows 4 to 6% for the year. That is the slowest pace in more than a decade. There are two places corporate labor goes to die in this story. The first is offshore, where pricing pressure eventually compresses the contract until the work moves home or disappears entirely. The second is the customer side of a chatbot interface, where the work continues, but nobody is being paid for it. The Austrian philosopher Ivan Illich named that second place in 1981. Shadow work. The unpaid labor people do for institutions when the institutions stop doing it themselves. Filling out forms, self-checkout, triaging your own customer service problem through a chatbot. A growing share of AI deployment looks like this. Triage moved to the customer. Returns moved to the customer. Patience metered out by an algorithm. The accounting is asymmetric. When a chatbot replaces a worker, the productivity gain is measured. When the chatbot fails and the customer spends 40 minutes clicking through it to reach a human, that 40 minutes does not show up in any productivity statistic. The pattern shows up three ways. A 22-year-old in Atlanta cannot get the structured analytical job. A 26-year-old in Bangalore is doing that job for a US client, and the automation is reaching them next. And a customer in either city is doing the work the call center used to do. The broken ladder is not only an American ladder. LinkedIn's 2026 Jobs on the Rise report put AI engineer at the top for the second year in a row. That number is directional, not literal. A meaningful share of postings are not real fillable jobs. Talent pipeline pre-positioning, market research, listings made before budget approval. The trend itself is corroborated outside LinkedIn. Named firms have announced AI orchestration teams with specific headcount targets. The Anthropic Economic Index shows occupational migration into work that supervises rather than performs structured analysis. Compensation for AI engineers in the U.S. ranges from about $180,000 to $350,000, depending on the firm and the seniority. About 53% of these roles are remote or hybrid. The roles pay when they exist. The question is, how many of them exist? A second category is appearing alongside the engineers. AI evaluators, model risk officers, AI safety engineers, AI audit leads. The roles that exist because someone has to check whether the agentic system is doing what it says it is doing. Smaller in number, where reliability lives. These new roles are real. They are also smaller than the bullish narrative claims, and they require the kind of judgment that used to be developed on the first rung of the ladder. The complementarity story and the displacement story share one weak link. Both depend on whether anyone is still being trained at the entry level to grow into the senior judgment work. The premium pricing tells you the rest of the story. Companies are paying $350,000 for senior AI judgment because they spent 3 years dismantling the first rung where that judgment used to be cultivated. The high salaries are not a sign the system is working. They are the cost of importing judgment you stop growing. Back to the opening figure. Foushee counted 54,694 layoffs blamed on AI across 2025. The U.S. economy added about 31,000 jobs per month on average across the same year. The 54,694 is real. It is also, in context, a concentrated and politically loud number rather than an economy-wide signal. First, AI is providing a reason, sometimes accurate, sometimes performative, for cuts that were going to happen anyway. The 2022-2023 tightening cycle softened the labor market. The 2024 cooling continued. Naming AI in a 2025 layoff announcement turns a margin decision into a strategic narrative. That is convenient. It is not the same thing as the technology doing the work. Second, the structured entry-level work is genuinely getting absorbed, not by some unified agentic system, by a combination of language model substitution at the task level and a hiring freeze at the role level. That is the slower and more serious story because it does not show up as a layoff number. It shows up as a missing cohort 5 years from now. A third force is arriving now, the regulatory layer. EU AI Act enforcement ratchets through 2026. The Colorado AI Act took effect this year. New York's automated employment decision rules are now binding. State liability awards in agentic AI cases will reprice commercial insurance and slow deployment further. The indicators worth watching are quarterly earnings transcripts for layoff reversals, the gap between announced layoffs and BLS payroll prints, the next Anthropic Economic Index occupational migration release, and state liability awards in agentic AI cases. The insurance market will react before the discourse does. The story is not the bloodbath the bear case claims. It is not the soft landing the bull case sells. It is a structural reordering with a specific signature. The first rung of the white-collar ladder is the part being pulled. Most institutions have not yet decided whether to rebuild it. The decisions made in 2026 and 2027 are the ones that matter. There is a specific thing to watch in the next 18 months. The gap between AI-cited layoff announcements and BLS payroll prints. If announcements keep climbing while payrolls do not follow, the story will turn out not to have been displacement. It will have been signaling. A workforce decision dressed in a technology narrative. A layoff announcement that names AI is partly a workforce decision and partly a message to the board. The first cohort of firms doing that earned a stop price reward in 2025. The second cohort, the ones now copying the script, may find the market has stopped paying for it. 5 years of senior judgment with no apprentices behind it is the version of this story where institutions discover what they cut. Not in a layoff announcement, in a recruiter's call that goes unreturned because nobody at the firm has the background to take the job. The cost of breaking the first rung lands at the top of the ladder, on a lag. The MIT 95% will be remeasured. The New York Fed will release another graduate unemployment series. The Anthropic Economic Index will publish its next occupational snapshot. The 54,694 is a 2025 number, not a 2026 forecast. Until those readings come in, the bear case and the bull case are spending the same evidence. The honest position is to know where the numbers are, watch how they move, and treat the loudest version of the story with the most suspicion.